Welcome to Electric Evolution with Liz Allan. This podcast explores the transition to net zero and the systems driving real change in how we move, live and power our world. Every week I sit down with the people leading that change, those offering insight, innovation and impact in many ways people don't fully see until they hear their stories. If you're ready for real conversations that inspire action and drive change, please like this video, subscribe to the channel and join us on this journey, and let's cut through the noise and build a better future together. Hello everyone, today I've got with me Chris Cheetham, who's the founder and CEO of Safer Charging. So Chris, thank you ever so much for joining me today. We've had lots of conversations over this last few months, haven't we?
We have, yeah, an absolute pleasure to be here. I'm looking forward to it.
So before we dive into what you're doing at Safer Charging, can you tell me a little bit about your background and what you did before and what you kind of have done in the run-up to starting Safer Charging up?
Yeah, absolutely, and I'll try and keep it succinct because I've had a lot of stuff over the years influence it. But I suppose best to start at university. I studied environmental science. That's not what kicked off my passion for sustainability, but it really cemented everything that I loved about it and all the different avenues that you could go down. And I came out of my university course with a head swimming of, do I want to be go into forestry management, soil science, or recycling and waste, and there was all sorts of stuff. And it kind of just transpired that everything that I needed or wanted to go into either needed more further education or just tons of volunteering. And I did some volunteering as part of the end of it, but I had to pay bills. So I ended up working for my local council in setting up a alternate recycling refuse collection scheme. And that was great. I got brilliant exposure to that side of things. And then that contract ended and I ended up becoming a bin man because there was a job available. And
oh, bless you.
Yeah, I absolutely loved that though, the camaraderie of it and understanding, you know, what goes on from that perspective. Yeah, brilliant. And then when that finished up, I kind of fell into sales, as a lot of people do, I think. No one really wakes up one morning and goes, Mum, I want to be a salesman. But it just kind of happened that my personality and skill set, it just kind of worked. And I did a lot of, my early sales career was all commission only. So if you don't sell, you don't eat.
Oh, yeah.
Simply it. And that proves that you can either do it or you can't do it. So I learnt a lot in those early jobs about myself and about sales skills, and it was all B2C at that point. Mm-hmm. So then things moved towards a B2B environment. I'll fast forward a bit to finding PodPoint back in the early days of them setting up. So back then I had heard someone talking about a Tesla and how cool it was.
God,
that was my only
so long ago.
Yeah, so cars have never bothered me. So I don't have that passion that some people, or many do in our industry.
You like my husband, yeah.
Yes. So they're nice. Some are nice, some are rubbish, and you know they get you from A to B as far as I'm concerned. But when I started getting involved in what I loved was the ability for change and seeing how this industry particularly was so ripe for a wide scale change that was the biggest change since the horse and cart got replaced. And it was going to happen in my lifetime, and I either become part of it or I just sit on the sidelines and watch. So becoming part of that at the early stage was so like formative in my understanding of where I am now. So you know, I was very lucky. The role I had, I would go and speak to leasing companies and big businesses, and I would be the one that was trying to convince them that they weren't just milk floats. You know, back in those days, there was no proof. Like the supply chains weren't there. There were one or two vehicles on the road. So it was really early days. But that was. I absolutely loved it, and the thing that I loved most was the ability to help train and transform people's mindsets for accepting that EVs would work for them or their customers, and all of that was just fascinating. So I spent 8 very happy years there, and grew a fantastic team as part of it, grew up through the business, and when that came to an end, I remember thinking to myself, well, I just had my daughter at that point, my first child, and it was a terrible time to not have a job for the first time in like 30 years or so. And then I thought, well, if I don't start my own business now, I probably won't. So it felt like the right opportunity to make it happen.
It's funny, isn't it? There's always something that sparks that change. You know, I've had that myself, and I know other people who've had that besides yourself. You know, where you where something happens in your life, and you do kind of go, right, I've got to do it now. I've got to do it. And I've been kind of running my own businesses since like the late 90s, because I had that thing that happened, you know, that was like, right, I need to do this now. If I'm not going to do it, then I won't, and it won't happen. You know. And I've been kind of running businesses, and then employed, and then running business. But I always enjoy running a business, because it's just so. It's hard work. People don't realise how hard work it is, do they? You know, it really is. But it's brilliant. It can be brilliant as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I expected it to be tough, and I was under no illusion that it was going to be an easy ride. But there's certain things that you can't comprehend until you've done it. It is intensely tough. I would say one thing that did go in my favour was because of COVID and everything moving remote. I had a remote first role for years, so I got used to and also was just very comfortable with working from home. So that ability to still focus and work out what parts of your day are going to be productive, and how you get rid of the ones that are not so good, and get back to a flow state, like that was stuff that I'd already figured out. So I think that's helped definitely.
I totally get you. I do like the mix of actually being able to work from home and go out as well, you know, now. Yeah. But because there are some people who find working from home very, very difficult, don't they?
Absolutely. Yeah, and it depends on your setup as well. Like, I remember those early days, there were more people that were in their bedroom with a laptop on their bed because they got nowhere else to go, you're in a flat share or something like that, than there were with a proper office space. So yeah, very, very different, of course, working in that kind of environment.
Exactly. So let's talk about safer charging then. So you talked about kind of why you set it up. What does safer charging do, and who are you helping?
Yeah, so safer charging was born from the difficulties that I saw the industry facing already, and how I saw it maturing as well. So we look after post-installation maintenance and aftercare for commercial clients, and that's everyone from small business right the way up to large-scale businesses, fleet operators, or anything public network for that matter. And then pre-installation, we help with things like how you go about starting the EV journey. So what does it look like to transition your fleet, or provide an office charger for your staff or your visitors. Really taking people on that journey to the point of understanding what it is that's going to be important for how it might impact their business. And it's really key as well for that part of the sort of consultancy angle to be looking at now, but also the future. So because I've been in this space for so long, I understand how it's changed and how it's going to continue changing. So that part's really important as well, that it's fit for purpose into the future. And the bit that sort of overlaps either side of that, pre-install and post-install, is fire risk inspection. And it should be the case that the majority of charge point installations are having a competent risk inspection performed before the installation. There are a number of horror stories out there which have been created where people haven't had these assessments done, and you spend, I don't know, 100k or whatever it is for a big installation to happen, and then you can't turn them on because the insurers said, yeah, that's not safe. So that's important to get done first. Like make sure you measure twice, cut once. That approach is very sensible for EV charging installs. And then post-install, it might be that you've got a change of use of the car park, you're redeveloping it or adding to the install. There's a number of reasons, or indeed a landlord or an insurer is requiring that you have a look at updating that risk assessment. So post-installation, that's relevant as well.
So are you working with a variety? So it's a variety of stakeholders at various levels that you're working with. Is this, so we're talking councils, landowners, CPOs, that kind of thing, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. And I like to think we sit somewhere in between drivers that need to charge, businesses that want to do the right thing, and then third party interests. And those third parties might be the insurers, they might be fire safety, emergency services, for instance. So somewhere in that mix to bring those various stakeholders together.
Okay. And you have created the UK's first electric vehicle charging installation condition report, and that's a long name, isn't it? Tell me a little bit about that, will you?
Yeah, so the EVCICR, slightly more manageable version. So firstly, it's probably worth saying just a little bit about an EICR. So
yes, please.
Electrical Installation Condition Report. Now, that EICR is something that if you are a commercial or a domestic landlord, or you work in facilities, chances are you'll be very familiar with it. And it's the industry standard testing regime that fixed assets go through. So if you are a residential landlord, you have to have one of these performed every 5 years at the property, or when it changes tenancy by law. And then on the commercial side, it's a bit more flexible as to the sort of cadence of that. But typically, you have a 5-year cycle of testing, and it's a thorough test. So it goes through the entire circuit that fixed asset is installed upon. So, brief nutshell of EICRs. So the EICR is very important. It's recognised. It's in the wiring regulations. You know, it's a recognised standard that people work to. And the thing is that when I was looking at how aftercare is generally looked at with EV charging, it's kind of lumped into the same processes that many other fixed assets have. And that's not the most sensible approach in my view. So what we tend to see is that when a business has installed EV charging, it is likely to be one of the highest or the highest loading assets that they have at their premises. And it's also likely to have a very different usage pattern to what other items like a roller shutter door or whatever it might be that needs power to it, because EVs might well charge over 8 hours or whatever the dwell time might be, but it's not going to be a short, sharp burst of power. These are powered for a long time. They're very different in the way that they are used typically to other things that might be at sites. It's also generally untrained users that are operating them. So, and this is not that anyone needs to go through a university degree to use a charge point, but the point being that you might not be trained to look at potential damage or issues upstream to the charge point or the charging environment. You just want to plug in your car and get into your office or whatever it is that you're doing, or as a fleet driver, you just expect it to work. So there's this whole thing around the types of risks are slightly different to many other fixed assets that people will have, and the manufacturers of charge points tend to recommend that there is an annual inspection undertaken.
Yes, yeah.
So, and that's very wise. The annual inspection should be thorough. So one of the things that I've done and I'm passionate about talking about with safer charging is that the EICR is very important, but it also only takes one part of the picture really. So you're looking at the electrical safety of that circuit that it's on. So in my view, there's four things that make a successful and safe charging area, and that's your electrical. So your EICR covers that off. You've got fire risk, making sure that you've not got combustible materials stored nearby and all those sorts of things. You've then got things like the charging environment. So what's the bay sizing like? Is the lighting sufficient? And all those sorts of things that make the charging environment a better experience for people. And then the actual usability, how are people interacting with the charge point? And that might be payment terminals, it might be signage, things like that. So you've got this sort of four regions of perspective. And if you're like most businesses, lumping the charge point inspection into a 5-year testing cycle, along with other fixed assets at your site, you're missing quite a bit there, in my view. And it's also a long period of time where you could have many thousands of charging cycles happening within that period, and that's a lot of stress on the pinch points of those systems. So what I really stress for people is that the frequency and the scope of that EICR, in my view, should change from what you do as a standard setup. So an annual EICR, along with a wider scope of what that's looking at, rather than just the cabling passes its stress test. Looking at a bit of a wider picture of that is what I promote people to be, or suggest people should be looking at.
I mean, that to me sounds a really, really sensible thing to do, because as you say, this is the kind of the load that it's putting on the capacity. I suppose it's load and capacity, isn't it, within that building, wherever those chargers are attached to, the speed of the chargers, how many chargers you've actually got. And as you're saying, it's getting people to think in quite a different way at those areas that aren't currently being looked at. So it makes sense. So are you kind of suggesting that people should be doing this on an annual basis then, dependent, right, actually, let me just think again. Would it be best to do it on an annual basis, dependent on the number of chargers, or is it irrelevant for the number of chargers, really?
No, it's not irrelevant. I would say that the thing that changes it is the sort of usage type, and also the commercial environment that it's in. So it might be that you've got one charge point at an office that is in use every day.
Yeah.
And in which case, that's something which is going to need a bit more, warrant a bit more of a greater inspection regime than something which is, not, it's used once in a while or something. But even then, I mean, the sort of degradation that you see, because charge points are out in the wild, right? They are open to the elements a lot of the time, or open to rodents, insects, or abuse from people that don't care about these things. So even if it's not utilised that often, it can still be important to have this. And I think it's something that we're likely to see in the regulations actually change, that this become an annual requirement for people. So really we're just getting ahead of the game for people and helping them understand that this is something that they're going to have to get used to. And I hopefully won't say this too many times in this podcast. It's not about scaremongering. So no, I just want to make this absolutely clear that we're not saying charge points are unsafe or vehicle fires are going to happen all the time. No, all the data that I see is that EVs are far less likely to combust than internal combustion engines. You've got charge points that go through millions of charge cycles without any fire-related events, and there's so many safety mechanisms built in, and the standards of build are excellent. So, you know, it's not about any of that part, but as soon as things leave the production line and they go into the world, and the installer has done their job and they've got everything done, ticked all the boxes, it's then just on its own, and it unless it's looked at properly and with an experienced eye, there are lots of things that can start to go wrong. And I think this, I was thinking of how else to communicate this. So I was trying to think, what was I doing in 2015? So 2015, and maybe like everyone listening could have a think about this. What were you doing in your life? Could you then imagine that you were a business that installed, let's say, 10, 20 charge points in the early workplace grant? I think it was available then. And up until now, up until today, they've been looked at once.
Yeah.
Because that's the reality. They could just be coming round to their second inspection. And for me, that's not good enough. I think that that cadence needs to change.
I suppose if you think about it like pat testing, you know, kind of, I don't know how often people have to do pat testing, but it's kind of on that, isn't it? It's making sure that actually we're not just looking at reliability here. We're looking at safety. I mean, reliability is an important kind of point as well, but the safety side of things. And one of my old neighbours, bless him, used to say prevention is better than cure. You know, and I really think that's a really important thing to think of, because you can't just install something like this and just kind of go, there you go. It's like, I think it's just, to me, it's the right thing to do, rather than just leaving it, like you say.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I there was a phrase that I really liked. I heard a little while back, which is that time degrades user attention as well as hardware, and it's so true. So as soon as you've got charge points go into a business environment, typically they're going to be the talk of the water cooler, or you know, people are go downstairs, go and have a look at them, see what they're like, give their opinion. But then once you use it for the first time, you're going to be paying real close attention to how you interact with it. Once you've done it 10, 20, 50, 100 times, no one's really paying attention. So one of the things that we picked up on an inspection the other day was, these are quite rare, but this was a tethered charge point at an office, and that charge point cable, where it retracts into the cable management area, had become the seal on the rubber had perished at that point. You had exposed cable, and that's the sort of thing that you don't notice it if you're using that day in, day out. It's just it just becomes part of your experience to get back in the office and think about what you were doing. So it's really important that people have an external eye come in and look at these things, with the experience of knowing what to look for. And just one final point on, you mentioned around what's the right amount, like the right amount of visits, for instance. It really depends as well on that utilisation and if it's a commercial site. So, for instance, for most businesses, I would say that an annual inspection is sufficient. Having some reactive capability as well is really important, but from a proactive side, an annual visit is sufficient. And then it might be that you have a particularly high utilisation area, in which case it would be worth probably putting in a 6-monthly lighter inspection. So we offer these as well. They're typically going to be more visual and have perhaps a simpler test gun applied to the charge point, make sure it's still functioning in the way it should. But you're not doing the in-depth inspection of the full testing of the circuit. So that's useful. Or if you're running a public network site, if there's any CPOs listening, I'm sure they're already doing this, but having monthly or even weekly inspections that are just simple visual inspection. You've got someone on site to go and have a look at things, make sure they're presenting in the way that they should be, and you've had no degradation or vandalism or tree roots grow up in that space of time. And the one other thing I'd say about that is, if you're performing that level of inspection, absolutely do it at different times of day, because you are not creating your charging experience to be only experienced when the sun is out and everyone's ready to go for a barbecue. It's got to work at the middle of the night, it's got to work in terrible weather conditions, and how is your site presenting then? So that's really important when you're getting that cadence, more frequent cadence, just to stagger how that's done throughout the day.
And also, I was going to say, there's a few things that you've got me thinking about here. So part of it is, like you said, the water cooler conversations. If you're not looking for these things and you're not keeping up with them, then actually those water cooler conversations, as happened with one of my friends last year when we had, I mean, I know we don't get a lot of sun in the UK, but sometimes when we do, and the way things are going, we get periods of really hot weather, don't we? And they were talking about the fact that some of the chargers, and I know whose chargers they are, the manufacturer, they were overheated. They just weren't working. Whether they'd been put on the right side of the building, or, you know, because sometimes if you think about it, it's like we've had this with our heat pump that we've got, where the fan is outside, there was a temperature sensor, and it was in the wrong place because it was the sun was hitting it all the time. So when it was only 16 degrees, it was saying it was 28. You know, so things like that. So there's various issues with sensors and stuff. But for these guys, my friends, the company she was working for, whether the chargers have been put on the wrong side of the building and in total sunshine or not, but basically the chargers didn't work in really high temperatures. So it's things like that, but isn't it? But it's kind of, if I think about this is partly to do with a risk assessment as well. It's kind of, you know, you've got to keep, what you're doing is a bolt on to a risk. If you're looking at the risks of not working or issues or things like that, anybody who runs a business, if we're talking workplace charging specifically, it's not just in their best interest, it's, you know, something they have to do anyway, isn't it? And like you say, things change over a year. And you, especially if it's the first 12 months or the first 24 months, you've got to be looking at this, haven't you?
Yeah, and the thing that I keep coming back to with it is that within a business environment, you're going to have either the owner or landlord or whoever is the appointed responsible person.
Yes.
They have a legal responsibility to, under Health and Safety at Work Act and the other legislation that's in place, to provide a safe environment for their staff and visitors. And what worries me is that there are plenty of examples out there of people who are in that position who have unknown or unquantified risks sat around this that don't really know what they're getting into. And this goes back to when we were just chatting before this went live about the experience levels of people about EV charging are, you know, when you look at a countrywide perspective, that it's not deep. There are experts out there, and there are plenty of businesses that do fantastic jobs with quality installations and quality aftercare. But when it comes to designing ChargePoint or thinking about how ChargePoint installation might affect your business, the chances of there being an expert within the business are quite slim. And what ends up often happening is that the ChargePoint project goes to whoever had some availability on their desk at the time. You might be a specialist in HR, you might be a facilities manager, I don't know. But the chances are you're not an expert in EV charging. So you need to have some expertise come in and help out and understand what it is that you should be doing, really. And
we were talking as well, weren't we, before we were recording, about kind of this being, because we've just talked about workplace, but we talked about kind of councils. And that happens in exactly the same way. And we've been working with some councils recently where, you know, they haven't got the people. Lots of councils haven't got the people to kind of do this work, and they're being thrown something that it's like, I suppose it's a bit like a hot potato, isn't it? Yeah. You know, like, oh God, next person, you know. And it's not that people don't want to do this. It's just that the capability and the you've got enough in your day job. Yeah. Most of them have got enough going on in their day job, and then they've got this other thing that's been thrown at them. you know, and you've only got a certain capacity to kind of take on that information anyway, haven't you? So
Yeah.
the stuff that we've been doing recently with these councils is you know, it's different to yours, but it's actually looking at the service that they've been receiving.
Yeah.
And actually the number of faults, because we can go on to faults as well, can't we, here? The number of faults that are happening on various charges,
Yeah.
where they're coming from, why they're happening, are they being rectified within the SLA, you know, and that kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
And
And if we
it's so
look at the
important.
sorry, go on.
Oh, sorry. Didn't mean to speak over you. Yeah, it's so important. The quality of that aftercare just it varies, and
Yeah.
so this is something which is not unique to EV charging whatsoever. This is, you could say this is applicable to pretty much any industry, but most parts of the charge point value chain want to talk about new chargers, and that's because you want to sell the new thing, of course, that's self-evident, but they tend to work better, the parts are going to be more readily available, they might have more capabilities for upselling software or whatever it might be. You want to talk about the new stuff. You don't want to be talking about all the old stuff that's in the ground. However, in EV charging, those old things are going to have to do their innings for probably 8 to 10 years to get a full life cycle out of a charge point.
Yeah.
So we need to be talking about what happens next, and that's exactly why I started this business, to be talking about, well, don't just think about here and now and getting the install complete. Think about what happens next and how you're going to look after this site and those charges for that ongoing period. And one of the stats that I pulled out, this was a few months back, so it might have even improved further by the time this goes live, but when I last looked, there were about 3,500 charge points out of service on the public network. So it was about 4% at the time, I think.
Right.
And that doesn't shock me. It might shock some people as to like how many that is. It's quite a high number, I suppose. But when you consider that many of those will be old defunct units that just haven't been cared for, things like the public charge point regulations are going to be changing that, and the PCPR is a very positive thing for public network, so that you've got that 99% reliability uptime for DC rapids, and I would hope that we start to see AC given the attention that it deserves as well. But the thing that I saw happening, and again, this is one of those where I'm not looking to fearmonger or anything, it's just the way my brain works. Some call it pessimistic. I like to think that I'm realistically optimistic, is that if you've got that many charge points out of service in something which is, the public network is rightly so, given the headlines, it's given the brand reputations that get pinned on it, it's given all the money because that's where the big cash is. What's going to happen when these businesses have back of house private charge points that need service as well? Where's your priority lying? It's public network. So what I don't want to see happen is that private businesses that have invested a lot of time and money into making the switch to electric vehicles be sort of seen as a lesser priority. I don't want that to happen. So my priority is making sure that businesses are given the support that they should have and they deserve to have, whether they've got an expert in there or whether, like the council reference that you just mentioned, they haven't got anyone that normally picks this up. It shouldn't be a problem. That shouldn't be to their detriment. They should have someone that's happy to independently advise and take care of that for them. So that's what I'm here to do.
And you know what? It's kind of, and I think of, people think, because we're both consultants here, aren't we, when it comes down to it. And I think neither of us are the kind of people that you kind of, you know, the old-fashioned consultants that go, give me a watch and I'll tell you the time. You know, that's not what it's about at all. It's about actually making a difference. And I was just going to talk to you about the fact that the 3,500 chargers out of service. Do you know what? They're not all just old ones, are they? I'd love to know what the kind of the longevity of these chargers are. But I've seen brand new chargers, you know, or not quite brand new, but ones that have been bagged off in service stations that actually you've got a bay of about 15 charges, and out of those 6 of them have been bagged off.
Yeah.
How does that look to the public as
Yeah.
well? That's the other thing. That's the whole point of them being called public charges, because the public see them.
Yeah.
And what impression does that give to the public if they're all bagged off with black bags? We've got to, and they, especially if we're talking about ultra rapid chargers, they're not cheap. It's why would you install something and then just bag it off? What is it? What is happening for that to be a thing?
Yeah.
Because again, that public perception is just seeing half a dozen chargers bagged off, new ones. So I think, and like you say about the charge point regs, I really, really hope that things change because of them. We'll see, won't we, after the end of the first 12 months on looking at kind of open data and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely, and I really hope things change as well, because the whole, yes, I've started a business to give myself and my family a nice life, and ultimately I'm not here as a charity. I'm here to make money, so there is that. But I really want to make sure that whatever I do is based around helping people. It's how I've always done this in my career to date. I get the most satisfaction out of being able to say at the end of a project, I've helped someone overcome a massive hurdle that they've had, or I've saved them X amount of money, or look at this problem that they've avoided 3 years down the line because of what I've been able to do for them. That's what gives me the satisfaction to keep doing it again every day. So I wholeheartedly believe that this is the right way to be doing things, and yes, you need a bit of carrot and stick as part of that. The PCPR is definitely going to bring the standard up, but it also needs people to be approaching it in the right way, and really wanting to make a difference.
Yeah, I think, and I'm the same. I'm the same as you. I just want to. It's about getting people to recognise that having an external set of eyes is sometimes a good thing, because actually, I don't know about you, I'm very, very good at challenging people's norm, the way that they're working, and kind of asking why, and is there a better way of doing this? And the other thing is, especially with working with these councils recently, their gut feeling was there were problems.
Yeah.
And actually, it took, kind of us to kind of jump in and delve into data. And once you've got data, people can't argue with data. There's the gut feel, which is great, but actually, once you've got evidence, that makes a difference, and then you can move from there and building a case. That's the other thing, isn't it? So
I think that's a really important point, and one of the main things that we help deliver as well is there is a lot of data out there, and things like you may be familiar with RC59. It's one of the documents which is guidance based around electric vehicle charging for in sort of a commercial environment typically, and the things that you get come out of that. It's a very comprehensive document. It misses some things. It's not entirely complete, but it's insurance industry focused. They like it. It's nice and tick boxy. So it does the job of getting through all this stuff. But at the end of it, one of the reports we had we compiled the other day was 40 odd pages of detailed fire risk inspection advice, and it's not very specific to the environment that it's in, so it's very generic to cater for lots of different scenarios that it might face. So as a business, then being handed that back, what are you supposed to do with that? Data's great, but it's only good if you can actually interpret it for your business and use it as something actionable. So what we do is then we go through all of that, use all of our experience to say, actually, here's your priority action list of stuff that you really need to have a think about. Here's the things that, when you redevelop the car park or whatever it might be, then's your time. or stuff that is really not relevant to you. So don't worry reading all of these like extra pages of stuff that is not relevant. Here's the stuff you actually need to care about. So it's cutting through that noise, and a lot of the consultancy work is about saying there's so much information out there. If you try and just Google what you should do, oh my gosh, there is so much out there, and it is so much of it is so misleading. So having someone like yourself who knows what they're talking about and come into a business and say, actually, here's the things that you need to consider, it's so powerful.
Yeah. It's the prioritization, like you said, breaking stuff down, because people don't always understand what all this stuff is. But it's I always say that it's always good to work out what the quick wins are first.
Yeah.
Because quick wins give people confidence.
Yeah.
And actually, once because work in improvement for a long time, if you're doing something which we call a step change is a massive project that could take 12 months. And sometimes when you're working on something that's that long, people start losing that kind of that will. They lose the will to live for a start of. Do you know what I mean? And it's kind of, oh my God, are we ever going to get there? Whereas if you're starting off with kind of short, quick wins and kind of go, right, okay, these are the things that we can do within a really short period of time, and they will make a difference, because it is about incremental change. In a lot of cases, because people want to feel that they're being listened to, that that things are moving in the right direction. And so you go for quick wins, short, medium, long-term goals and things like that. And that's what we're both doing. We're just doing it at different parts of the charging journey, aren't we? Or, there's probably areas that we actually overlap, but it's very complementary to one another.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's really key. I'm pretty passionate about that.
So if we look at kind of the future of charging, but actually, do you know what? There's a couple of things. So far, and I did say to you I was going to ask you this one, what would you say has been your proudest moment so far? That's not the future. This is kind of what's already happened that's made you really proud.
I mean, with safer charging, I would say getting a first deal over the line, proving that what I was doing was relevant to people. That was a nice ego boost, of course, but it's more about just saying, I'm not on my own here. I've not just had an idea that was random and thought, oh, people will love it. It actually works, and to hear feedback from people that it's been incredibly useful in helping them cut through the noise and get what they needed sorted, or listening when others won't. That's the whole thing around just providing a level of service that people actually can trust. I think that I take a lot of pride in being able to do that.
Brilliant. No, that's good. That's good. And actually, I know exactly what you're saying. With regards to kind of work coming through, it's one of those things where it helps your confidence, and all of a sudden you're kind of like, okay, so I do know what I'm talking about. Yeah. Actually, and it's not the fact that I'm wanting to do this. You're proving that things are actually coming to fruition, which is brilliant. So well done you, or well done us. Anyway, so if we look ahead then now, what's your kind of biggest hope for the EV charging sector? What would you like to see it look like, and how it helps people on a daily basis?
Yeah. So the vision statement that I put together for safer charging is a world where EV chargers just work safely. So the premise behind that is that it's not something that you have to even think about. You are there as a user of a charge point to just plug your vehicle in and get on your way. And you might interact with it through your app or your energy provider or whatever scenario you're in, but you don't want to be thinking about anything else. So that's the part where I want this to become something that people's perceptions of charge points, so that they just function. They are there to work. They are easy to use, and people don't have that fear of, should I transition my fleet now? Is this the right time? Is the public network actually pants? Can I rely on it? All those sorts of things. I don't want to be a thing anymore. The whole thing around that there is no PCPR equivalent for private businesses. That's where I see an opportunity to say, well, we can raise the standard there. Let's make this something which people can have confidence in adopting electric vehicles throughout their lives and all different business environments and personal use. That's what I want to see. It's not just range anxiety anymore. That moved away, didn't it? It's sort of charger anxiety. That's now is it going to work when you get there? Is there going to be a queue? All those sorts of things. I want all that to go away, and it's totally achievable.
And final question then. We've talked about your children and your family, and kind of what you'd like. But what legacy would you like to leave? So moving forwards.
Yeah, in terms of legacy for my children, I want them to see that you can be successful with something that is there to make a difference. Like I could have chosen any number of different business ideas that I had, and there's ones that would have been way more commercially successful. So it's not just about making money. Yes, that would be a lovely thing to be able to provide a great life for my family, but I think the overriding thing is to have a passion and fulfill it, and just follow that on, see it through, and if it doesn't work, then you learn from it and you move on to the next thing. But you've tried, and I think that's the important point. It's about saying that you can have a vision and see it through.
Brilliant. Well, look, I'm going to share your website and all of your links and everything like that in the show notes. But on that point, I just want to say, Chris, it's been really interesting talking to you. It's been lovely. Like I say, we've had a few chats over the past few months, and it's just been nice to get to know you, and hopefully everybody who are watching and listening will feel absolutely the same. So now I'm going to ask you, the audience, just to say, if you've enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to like and subscribe and share the podcast with your friends, your colleagues, anyone passionate about the future of EVs and sustainable transport, or just generally. It really helps us kind of grow these conversations. But thank you again, Chris. It's been lovely to talk to you. And to everybody else listening and watching, I'm going to say see you next time. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much. Bye.
Thanks for watching Electric Evolution with Liz Allan. If you've enjoyed this episode, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. If you're a charge point operator, local authority or stakeholder in EV charging, I'd love to talk to you about our Charge Point Evolution framework. It's designed to help you create a seamless EV driver journey, boost utilisation and maximise your return on investment. Alternatively, if you know someone who'd be a great podcast guest or might be interested in sponsoring an episode, you can email me on liz@fullcircleci.co.uk. Thanks again for watching.